It was an early high resistance plenum vaporizer which was designed by Henry Boyle in 1920s. It is the historical precursor to the modern vaporizer, and it required a pressurized gas flow system, as the patient's inspiratory effort could not draw gas through it. It was employed with early continuous flow anesthetic machines to deliver agents like ether, trichloroethylene, or chloroform. Now, how it worked? This is the picture of a Boyle's bottle, and this is the schematic of the Boyle's bottle. It consisted of the glass reservoir for the liquid agent, and it had two manual controls. One lever set the splitting ratio between the bypass and the vaporizing flows, and a second plunger adjusted how close the incoming gas passed to the liquid surface, allowing it to the bubble through for full saturation. And it had no automatic temperature compensation. The cooling from the vaporization reduced the output. This could be partly mitigated by placing the bottle in a room temperature water bath. Its advantages include it could be used with multiple different anesthetic agents. It was not agent specific and was capable of achieving full saturation of the carrier gas. The disadvantages include it was imprecise and unreliable. The delivered concentration was inaccurate and would fall as the agent cooled. And it had a major safety hazard. If dipped, the liquid agent could enter the breathing system, leading to dangerously high anesthetic concentration. Then there is a Goldman vaporizer. This is a picture of the Goldman vaporizer. So a Goldman vaporizer is also a variable bypass draw over vaporizer. It is low resistant and placed inside the breathing circuit. It is not temperature compensated and it is now obsolete in developed practice. It was historically used for dental anesthesia in a non-breathing rebreathing system or in field anesthesia in developing countries due to its small size, low cost, and simplicity. It was most commonly used with halothane but could also be used with trichloroethylene. It featured a glass reservoir from a vehicle fuel filter holding up to 30 milliliters of agent. Its concentration was adjusted via a ratchet control valve. The key safety features was its deliberate inefficiency. It was designed to be deliberately inefficient, making it difficult to deliver a halothane concentration greater than 3% to prevent overdosage. And it lacked wicks or baffle, so output was not fully saturated. Advantages are that it is small, lightweight, cheap, and portable, and it was simple to use and service. And the built in overdose protection for potent agents like halothane. The disadvantages include that it was variable and difficult to measure the output. There was no temperature compensation and it was unsuitable for less potent agents due to its inefficiency. And there is also a risk of agent spillage into the breathing system. Then there is also an Oxford miniature vaporizer, which is also a type of variable bypass but draw over vaporizer. That is, it is low resistance and placed inside the breathing circuit. And it features passive thermal buffering, but it is not actively temperature compensated. It is primarily used as a part of British military tri-service apparatus for field anesthesia and in developing countries. It is typically used with isoflurane or sevoflurane. This here shows an Oxford miniature vaporizer. And this is a schematic of the Oxford miniature vaporizer. There is a vaporizing chamber which has the volatile agent. There is an antifreeze heatsink and the gas flow and the lever connected to the plunger within the bypass channel. And there is also a bypass channel with adjustable orifice. Okay? The key features are its multi-agent capability. The control dial is removable and interchangeable, which allows its use with different volatile agents by switching the calibrated scale. It also has a heatsink which incorporates an ethylene glycol jacket to buffer the temperature drops from the vaporization, improving output consistency over simple drawer models. And it also has spill prevention. It contains a valve to prevent liquid agent spillage into the breathing system if the unit is tilted or inverted when turned off, but it could still be spilled if the unit is turned on. And it has a 550 ml reservoir and metal mesh wicks to increase the surface area for vaporization. Its advantages includes that it is portable, robust, and easily serviced. It has also acceptable accuracy across a range of flow rates. It is safer and more consistent than simple drawer vaporizers like Goldman due to its wicks and heat sinks. The disadvantages include its small reservoir capacity and it lacks a true automatic temperature compensation. Then comes another type, the EMO vaporizer or Epstein Macintosh of Oxford, which is also a type of variable bypass drawer vaporizer. That it is a low resistance and inside the breathing system. Its key innovation was that it introduced the first effective temperature compensation mechanism for the drawer systems using a bellows device. This here shows a picture of an EMO vaporizer, and this is the schematic of the EMO vaporizer. There is a fresh gas flow, a bypass chamber, a vaporizer chamber which has the volatile. There is a water reservoir for temperature compensation, and there are the thermocompensation bellows, and then the vaporizer and the bypass mixing chamber which goes out of the common outlet. It was designed for the accurate delivery of ether, but it remains in use in the developing world. It has a water jacket which acts as a heat sink, and the wicks increase the vaporization surface area. The bellows valve is an air-filled bellow inside the vaporizing chamber which expands with heat and contracts with cold. This moves a plunger that automatically adjusts the gas outlet, increasing flow as it cools to compensate for ething's falling saturated vapor pressure. It was calibrated for 22 to 20% output and is reasonably accurate at room temperature with flows of 4 to 10 liters per minute. Its advantages include that it is reliable and safe for its era, and it has an effective temperature compensation. The disadvantages include that it is bulky and heavy, 10 kg weight hota hai iska, and it requires a high gas flow for accuracy. It is not accurate at low gas flow. It's only accurate at 4 to 10 liters. And it is susceptible to the pumping effect where positive pressure ventilation can cause a dangerous surge in the agent output. And it is obsolete in the developed world due to the specific design for ether. Then there is another vaporizer of historical interest, the copper kettle vaporizer. It is a historical device which is a flow meter controlled variable bypass vaporizer and is now obsolete. This here picture shows the copper kettle. It was the first vaporizer to allow precise concentration control, and it was used for agents like chloroform, ether, and halothane. Unlike the modern automatic vaporizer, it required a manual control via two separate flow meters. One meter set the flow of gas bubbled through the agent to become fully saturated, while the other meter set the bypass flow, and the two streams mixed downstream. Complex calculations or tables were needed to determine the final concentration. It had temperature stabilization, but it was not truly compensated. The copper housing acted as a heat sink due to the copper's high heat capacity and thermal conductivity. This helped stabilize the temperature, but it did not provide for an automatic compensation. And it had a critical safety flaw. The design was inherently unsafe as it relied entirely on the operator. A fatal error like forgetting to turn on the bypass flow meter could deliver lethal concentration of agent directly to the patient. This major disadvantage led to its replacement. Now let's discuss the targeted control infusions. Although these are not part of the vaporizers, these are for intravenous agents. But because of their innovative nature and all, I've lightly discussed it here. So the purpose of targeted control infusion is to deliver total intravenous anesthesia or supplementing the volatile anesthesia. The anesthetist set a target plasma concentration or fixed site concentration, and the computerized pump uses a pharmacokinetic model to automatically achieve and maintain it. It uses a three compartment pharmacokinetic model. It is a mathematical model but not an anatomical, which is programmed into the pump. The model adjusted for the patient's demographic, which includes the age, weight, sex, and height, calculates the required loading dose and the infusion rate to reach and sustain the target concentration. The loading dose is calculated by target concentration, and the volume of distribution of the patient. And the infusion rate at steady state is calculated by target concentration and the clearance of the drug. And the effect site targeting is aimed to achieve the target concentration at the site of action, which is the brain, faster by temporarily overshooting the plasma concentration during induction. It has some specific drug models, like for propofol TCI, it uses models like MARSH, which are weight based and often plasma targeted, or Schneider, which incorporates lean body mass and often effect site targeting. The pediatric models also exist, but they are used less frequently. And there is also a remifentanil TCI, which use Minto's model, which incorporates for age, sex, weight, and height. And it is synergistic with propofol, but current models don't account for this interaction. The advantages of TCIs include that it has continuous anesthesia without disconnection and is ideal for airway procedures. It also reduces post-operative nausea and vomiting, and there is no atmospheric pollution from the volatile agents, which are all the greenhouse gases. The disadvantages and limitations include that there is no real-time concentration monitoring, unlike the end-tidal gas analysis, and the models vary, like the Marsh versus Schneider delivered different doses, and they were developed in healthy volunteers, so they may be inaccurate in obese, elderly, or unwell patients, and they are less established in the pediatric practice. There are some critical safety practices which are required, like use of a dedicated and visible infusion line to prevent accidental disconnection and awareness, and they also employ anti-reflux and anti-siphoning valves on all lines to sharing the same IV access to prevent unintended drug delivery or backflow. For future development, there is a potential for closed loop system where the infusion is automatically adjusted based on the measure of anesthetic depth, which includes a bispectral index. Now, there are some questions which are usually asked in the anesthesia viva. Let's briefly discuss that. So, first of all, let's discuss So, why are the tech vaporizers called so? The name tech is basically acronym for the temperature compensated. Okay? This is designation that refers to the machine's ability to maintain a constant output of volatile anesthetics despite the changes in the temperature of the liquid agent. Historically, the tech lineage began with the Tikota, that was the temperature compensated trichloroethylene air vaporizer. ठीक है, Tikota. So, following its success, the technology was adopted to create the Flowtech, which was calibrated for fluorethane or halothane, which was the first in series of the agent-specific tech vaporizer. Now, this lineage has evolved through various designs, including the Trek 3, 4, 5, and also the modern Tech 7 series. Now, why this temperature compensation is required? So, first of all, to understand that, let's discuss some physical concepts. There is a latent heat of vaporization. That is, the vaporization is an endothermic process. As the molecule escapes the liquid phase to become a vapor, they consume energy in the form of heat. This heat is drawn from the remaining liquid and the vaporizer body itself, leading to a significant drop in the temperature. Which has effect on the volatility. As the temperature falls, the saturated vapor pressure of anesthetic agent also falls. But now, what is the clinical effect of this decrease in the saturated vapor pressure? Without a compensatory mechanism, the concentration of the anesthetic delivered to the patient would gradually decline the longer the vaporizer is in use, which will lead to potentially inadequate depth of anesthesia because the concentration depends on the saturated vapor pressure. Now, what are the mechanical implementation used to compensate for this temperature drop? The hallmark of the textile platinum vaporizer is its method of automatic adjustment via bimetallic strip. This strip consists of two dissimilar metals with different coefficient of thermal expansion which are welded together. This strip acts as a temperature sensitive valve that automatically adjusts the splitting ratio. Now, when the temperature in the vaporizer decreases, the strip bends due to differential contraction of the metals. This movement restricts the bypass channels and allows a greater proportion of the fresh gas flow to enter the vaporizing chamber. By increasing the fraction of gas exposed to the liquid as the saturated vapor pressure falls, the vaporizer ensures that the final output concentration remains constant regardless of the temperature drop. Another structural compensation is the heat sink. In addition to the active mechanical compensation of the bimetallic strip, the tech vaporizer also utilizes a heat sink to stabilize the temperature. The cases are typically constructed from copper, a material chosen for its high density, high specific heat capacity, and high thermal conductivity. The mass of metal acts as a reservoir of thermal energy, which readily conducts heat from the environment into the anesthetic agent to mitigate the cooling effects of the vaporization. Now, the Tech 6, the desflurane vaporizer, is exempted from this temperature compensation because why? Because it has an active heating system. It is actively heated and there is a gas vapor blender that maintains the agent at 39 degrees centigrade to create a constant vapor pressure of 2 atmosphere. Then there is another question about which usually comes in the MCQs, especially the effect of altitude on the vaporizer output. ठीक है? So to understand this concept, we have to differentiate between two basic fundamental concepts. That is the concentration of the anesthetic agent, that is expressed as volume percent, and the partial pressure of the agent. हालांकि हम अक्सर जो है वॉल्यूम परसेंट यूज़ करते हैं टू डिस्कस द एनेस्थेटिक डेप्थ, but the actual clinical effect on the brain, that is driven strictly by the partial pressure of the anesthetic molecule on the central nervous system, ठीक है, which equilibrates with the partial pressure in the alveoli. Now what happens when a patient climbs to a higher altitude? Now when a person climbs to the higher altitude, the barometric, that is the atmospheric pressure, it decreases. ठीक है, but the saturated vapor pressure of a volatile anesthetic agent is determined solely by the temperature of the liquid and does not change with the changes in the ambient barometric pressure. Because the volume percent concentration of the gas is calculated as the ratio of the partial pressure to the total atmospheric pressure, this value necessarily changes as the atmospheric pressure falls. In the variable bypass vaporizers such as the TEC 4, 5 and 7 that uses the isoflurane or sevoflurane, they are designed to deliver a constant partial pressure of the anesthetic agent even when the barometric pressure varies. At higher altitudes where the barometric pressure is lower, the saturated vapor pressure of the anesthetic liquid inside the vaporizing chambers, that remains constant, because this constant saturated vapor pressure is now being diluted with less dense stream of the bypass gas. The delivered concentration percent volume increases. For example, if the barometric pressure is half, that a vaporizer set at 3%, the sevoflurane will actually deliver 6% concentration. But despite this doubling of the volume percent, the partial pressure delivered to the patient remains exactly the same as at the sea level. That would be about 0.03 into 760. That would be 22.8. And for 0.06, that is the 6%. At half the atmospheric pressure, that would be 380. It would still remain the same. So for these vaporizer, you do not need to adjust the dial setting at the altitude because the desired anesthetic effect is achieved by the constant partial pressure. But this is different for the measured flow vaporizer, that is the desflurane TEC 6 vaporizer. The TEC 6 vaporizer operates on entirely different principles because the desflurane has a very high saturated vapor pressure, that is about 670 millimeter of mercury at 20 degrees centigrade, and a boiling point near the room temperature of about 22.8 degrees centigrade. Because it delivers a fixed volume percentage, as the ambient barometric pressure decreases at altitude, the partial pressure of the desflurane delivered to the patient also decreases proportionally. For example, a dial setting of 10% at sea levels provides 76 millimeter of mercury of partial pressure, but at an altitude where the atmospheric pressure is halved for about 380 millimeter of mercury, that same 10% setting only delivers 38 millimeter of mercury. So to maintain the same anesthetic depth, that is the same partial pressure, the clinician must manually increase the dial setting on a TEC 6 vaporizer when at high altitude. Now, it is also essential to understand how altitude affects the gas monitoring equipment. So most modern anesthetic gas and vapor analyzers जो होते हैं ना, They measure the partial pressure but are calibrated to display the concentration as a percentage based on an assumed sea level pressure, that is 760 millimeter of mercury. So at high altitudes, these analyzers will underread, showing a lower percentage than what is actually being delivered to the patient. Additionally, जो variable orifice flow meters हैं, like rotameters, they will also underread at altitude because the gases are less dense. तो the clinical effects जो होते हैं, which depends on the number of molecules rather than the volume, they remain consistent. Then there is also another question which comes, that is, what is the effect of very high or very low fresh gas flow on vaporizer output? So, although the modern plenum vaporizer are very accurate and predictable over a range of flow that is about 250 milliliters per minute to 15 liters per minute, but at extreme low flow rates and extreme high flow rates, they are not that accurate. So why is that? At very low fresh gas flow, which are less than 250 milliliters per minute, the output of variable bypass vaporizer is generally lower than what the concentration is set on the dial. It primarily occurs due to two factors. The first is that there is insufficient pressure and density. The volatile anesthetic agents have a relatively high specific gravity. So at very low flow rates, the carrier gas entering the vaporizing chamber, they do not generate enough pressure or the velocity to effectively lift and advance these heavy molecules upward to the point where the vaporization and bypass stream rejoins. And there is also a linearity of the flow splitting. The internal mechanism that relies on the splitting ratio, the proportion of the gas entering the vaporizing chamber versus the bypass chamber. At very low flow rates, the resistance of the splitting valve can become non-linear. So the resistance in the bypass channel may decrease disproportionately, causing more gas to bypass the agent than the dial setting intended. So at very low flow rates, the vaporizer will deliver even lower output. Now, what is the effect of very high fresh gas flow rate that is greater than 15 liters per minute? So at very high flow rates, the output concentration will also tend to be lower than the dial setting. ठीक है? So दोनों में lower करेगा as compared to the set dial setting. Now, why this happens? It basically happens because of incomplete saturation. Because the goal of the vaporizing chamber is to ensure that the carrier gas leaving it is 100% saturated with the anesthetic agent. And the modern designs also use wicks to increase the surface area and also the baffles to lengthen the gas pathway. But at extremely high velocity, the gas moves through the chamber so rapidly that it does not have sufficient time to reach full equilibrium with the liquid agent. So it is not fully saturated. Also, due to the turbulence and the inefficient mixing, which occurs at high flow rates, the resistant characteristics of the bypass in the vaporizing chamber vary significantly because the flow becomes more turbulent at high flow rates. This leads to incomplete and inefficient mixing of the saturated vapor pressure and the diluent bypass gas before it exits the common gas outlet. Also, at very high flow rates, there is also the cooling effect, which accelerates the loss of the latent heat of vaporization. So, while the temperature compensation mechanisms attempt to mitigate this, but they may be overwhelmed because the gas flows so rapidly and it causes cooling at very high flow rates, which leads to the fall in the saturated vapor pressure and subsequent drop in the output. So these three features cause lower output than intended at very high gas flow rates. So हमने दो टॉपिक्स कर लिए. अच्छा, उसके बाद एक और जो क्वेश्चन आता है that is how to calculate the plenum vaporizer output. This is very important and slight bit difficult, so let's discuss it by writing it. So to understand how to calculate the plenum vaporizer output, you have to understand how a high pressure gas carrier gas is manipulated to deliver a clinically useful concentration from a highly volatile liquid. The calculation of the output can be approached through three primary conceptual layers. That is, the first, the concentration within the vaporizing chamber, then the splitting ratio, and then finally the final volume of vapors produced. So, how will we calculate the concentration in the vaporizing chamber? That is the first step. It is to determine the concentration of the saturated vapor before it is diluted. ठीक है, वेपराइजिंग चेम्बर के अंदर क्योंकि फुल्ली सैचुरेटेड हमारे पास होगा तो उसकी हमने कंसनट्रेशन निकालनी है. So inside the vaporizing chamber, the carrier gas becomes 100% saturated with the anesthetic agent. And the concentration of this saturated vapor pressure is a function of the agent's saturated vapor pressure and the ambient barometric pressure. That is, the concentration in chamber in percent is equal to saturated vapor pressure by ambient pressure. As it is in percentage, so we will multiply it with 100. For example, let's take an example. For isoflurane at 20 degrees centigrade, the saturated vapor pressure of isoflurane at 20 degree centigrade is about 238 millimeter of mercury. ठीक है. Now at standard sea level atmospheric pressure, which is 760, the concentration in the chamber will be 238 divided by 760 into 100. This will be about almost 31.6%. This will be the concentration of vapors inside the vaporizing chamber. Now, since this 31% concentration is lethal, so the vaporizer must dilute this internal flow. The fresh gas flow that enters the vaporizer is split into two streams, as we have already discussed, the bypass flow and the vaporizing chamber flow. Now, the ratio between these two is called the splitting ratio. For modern vaporizer, where the concentration control valve is located at the chamber outlet, the splitting ratio that is required to achieve a specific dial concentration is calculated as follows. हमने फर्स्ट क्या किया था, हमने कंसंट्रेशन चेंबर निकाला. अब सेकेंड हम स्टेप क्या करेंगे, स्प्लिटिंग रेशियो निकालेंगे. स्प्लिटिंग रेशियो कैसे निकलता है? स्प्लिटिंग रेशियो इज बेसिकली द बाईपास फ्लो ओवर चेंबर फ्लो, which is equal to the vaporizing chamber concentration minus the concentration set on dial divided by the dial concentration. So for example, again taking the sevoflurane example, if we have to deliver 1% isoflurane where the saturated vapor concentration is 31.6%. So what will be splitting ratio? The splitting ratio would be 31 minus 1 divided by 1, that is the dial. So it would be equal to 30 divided by 1 or 30:1. This will be the splitting ratio for 1% isoflurane. That means for every 31 units of gases, the 30 units must bypass the chamber and the 1 unit must enter it. Now, how to calculate the total vapor volume, how much liquid agent is consumed or how much actual volume of the vapor is produced. So this is calculated by the Avogadro's method or Avogadro's hypothesis. So, according to Avogadro's hypothesis, 1 mole of the gas equals, at standard temperature and pressure, that equals to 22.4 liters of liquid. So, for clinical concentration calculations at room temperature, we take 1 mole of gas occupying approximately 24 liters. Okay. Now again, let's take the isoflurane example. The molecular weight of isoflurane is 184.5 gram and the density is 1.5 gram per milliliters. So for this first step, we'll calculate how many number of moles are there in 1 milliliter of isoflurane. So for 1 ml of liquid isoflurane, it weighs 1.5 gram because its density is 1.5 gram. Okay? So the number of moles in 1 ml of liquid would be 1.5 gram divided by 184.5. That is the molecular weight. So it will come as 0.0081. These are the number of moles in 1 ml of isoflurane. Now, as we already said that 1 mole contains 24 liters. So 0.0081 moles will have, अगर इसी को हम मिलीलीटर्स में कर देंगे तो 24,000 मिलीलीटर्स. So 0.0081 moles will have about 195 ml. So 1 ml of liquid isoflurane will make up 195 ml, or for easier remembering, consider it almost 200 ml of vapors. Okay? This is the total vapor volume. This is how you calculate the total vapor volume. So there's also a formula for hourly consumption of the liquid. So how will we calculate the hourly liquid consumption of an agent? For liquid consumption, we use which is in mLs per hour. We use the formula, simplified formula, 3 into vaporizer setting, that is in percent, into fresh gas flow, that is liter per minute. So that gives us the liquid consumption, that is in milliliters per hour. So this was all about vaporizer and the different conceptual questions that come in the exam. So hopefully you understood it. If there is any inquiry, any ambiguity in that, or you want to ask about something, you can contact me on the official group. So let's meet in the next lecture. Thank you and goodbye.